Emily, who had been pointedly ignored by the Murrays at breakfast, was called into the parlor when the meal was over. They were all there, the whole phalanx of them, and it occurred to Emily, as she looked at Uncle Wallace, sitting in the spring sunshine, that she had not just found the exact word after all to express his peculiar quality of grimness. Aunt Elizabeth stood unsmilingly by the table, with slips of paper in her hand.
"Emily,"
she said,
"last night we could not decide who should take you. I may say that none of us feel very much like doing so, for you have behaved very badly in many respects."
"Oh, Elizabeth,"
protested Laura.
She is our sister's child."
Elizabeth lifted a hand regally.
"I am doing this, Laura. Have the goodness not to interrupt me. As I was saying, Emily, we could not decide as to who should have the care of you, so we agreed to Cousin Jimmy's suggestion that we settle the matter by lot. I have our names here written on these slips of paper. You will draw one, and the one whose name is on it will give you a home."
Aunt Elizabeth held out the slips of paper. Emily trembled so violently that at first she could not draw one. This was terrible. It seemed as if she must blindly settle her own fate.
"Draw,"
said Aunt Elizabeth. Emily set her teeth, threw back her head with the air of one who challenges destiny, and drew. Aunt Elizabeth took the slip from the little shaking hand and held it up. On it was her own name, Elizabeth Murray. Laura Murray suddenly put her handkerchief to her eyes.
"Well, that's settled,"
said Uncle Wallace, getting up with an air of relief.
"And if I'm going to catch that train, I've got to hurry. Of course, as far as the matter of expense goes, Elizabeth, I'll do my share."
"We are not paupers at New Moon,"
said Aunt Elizabeth, rather coldly.
"Since it has fallen to me to take her, I shall do all that is necessary, Wallace. I do not shirk my duty."
"I am her duty,"
thought Emily.
"Father said nobody ever liked a duty, so Aunt Elizabeth will never like me."
"You've got more of the Murray pride than all the rest of us put together, Elizabeth,"
laughed Uncle Wallace. They all followed him out, all except Aunt Laura. She came up to Emily, standing alone in the middle of the room, and drew her into her arms.
"I'm so glad, Emily. I'm so glad,"
she whispered.
"Don't fret, dear child. I love you already, and New Moon is a nice place, Emily."
"It has a pretty name,"
said Emily, struggling for self-control.
"I've always hoped I could go with you, Aunt Laura. I think I am going to cry, but it's not because I'm sorry I'm going there. My manners are not as bad as you may think, Aunt Laura, and I wouldn't have listened last night if I'd known it was wrong."
"Of course you wouldn't,"
said Aunt Laura.
"But I'm not a Murray, you know."
Then Aunt Laura said a queer thing, for a Murray.
"Thank heaven for that,"
said Aunt Laura. Cousin Jimmy followed Emily out and overtook her in the little hall. Looking carefully around to ensure privacy, he whispered,
"Your Aunt Laura is a great hand at making an apple turnover, Pussy."
Emily thought apple turnover sounded nice, though she did not know what it was. She whispered back a question which she would never have dared ask Aunt Elizabeth or even Aunt Laura.
"Cousin Jimmy, when they make a cake at New Moon, will they let me scrape out the mixing bowl and eat the scrapings?"
"Laura will. Elizabeth won't,"
whispered Cousin Jimmy solemnly.
"And put my feet in the oven when they get cold? And have a cookie before I go to bed?"
"Answer same as before,"
said Cousin Jimmy.
"I'll recite my poetry to you. It's very few people I do that for. I've composed 1,000 poems. They're not written down. I carry them here."
Cousin Jimmy tapped his forehead.
"Is it very hard to write poetry?"
asked Emily, looking with new respect at Cousin Jimmy.
"Easy as rolling off a log, if you can find enough rhymes,"
said Cousin Jimmy. They all went away that morning, except the New Moon people. Aunt Elizabeth announced that they would stay until the next day to pack up and take Emily with them.
"Most of the furniture belongs to the house, so it won't take us long to get ready. There are only Douglas Starr's books and his few personal belongings to pack."